Ahoy hoy gang, if this is your first time with us, welcome, and if you're joining from a previous video, hey, we love to see it and I hope you're doing well. It's season 11! What a journey it's been. This season we're gonna get the shortest episode order and some wild episodes covering everything from A to ZZ Top. So, what worked? What failed? What snake invasion of Arlen can be curtailed? There's only one way to see. Don't go back to watch Season 7, because it's time to review Season 11! 7 and 11 are the worst to rhyme. I have rhymed 7 and 11 more than a few times, and I refuse to stop. It's the season premiere! Peggy, while at her usual shoe store, runs into Carolyn, who is absolutely blown away by Peggy's sense of fashion. Carolyn being a drag queen who thinks that Peggy is a fellow sister of the craft. Peggy having no idea Carolyn is a drag queen. This was back in 07, where drag was not nearly as prevalent in mainstream media as it is today. RuPaul's Drag Race didn't even start airing until 2009, so the mainstream popularity was still a ways off. Meanwhile, Bobby and Joseph find a joke book, and every time they try and prank someone, good things happen to them instead. Peggy gets devastated when she finds out Carolyn thought she was a man, and Carolyn, on Hank's advice, takes Peggy to a meetup/clothes swap so she can see her fashion is celebrated as being strong and unique. I know that's the cliff notes of the episode, but honestly, it's not the story that matters, but rather the acting. There's a genuine spirit to the episode, and I gotta say it does shine through. It's one of the strongest Peggy episodes and gives Peggy a sense of community she's been largely denied outside of a doctor with a love of feet. Hank being oblivious to everything going on? That's on brand, but it's never treated in any malicious way. Everyone is just trying to live their lives how they want to, and the ending shot feels way more earned than, say, the end of Edumacating Lucky. The Peggy Horror Picture Show is one of the strongest later season episodes of King of the Hill, only bogged down by the B story being more dull or even annoying than anything. There's still a magic to this show that does peek out, and this is a great display of it. The Peggy Horror Picture Show is essential reading and an 8 out of 10. Lucky gets Bobby a python and it escapes into the toilet, and now Hank is afraid the snake may come back. So he goes to animal control and demands that they do their job. Rollo, played by Randall Reeder, and Tommy, played by legendary actor John Goodman, a man that is known in no small part for his voice acting. He was the lead star in Father of the Pride after all, and nothing else. Fun fact about that weird show, Donkey from Shrek guest stars actually played by Eddie Murphy. Father of the Pride was an odd show made for its time. Yeah, no, the animal control guys milk the snake situation for all it's worth, so they can finally get the recognition they feel they deserve, and Hank gets Dale to join up with his heroes and get to the bottom of the snake infestation. Dale fights for the animal control guys to do their jobs, and local ordinance is changed. Huzzah! I don't know. I feel like John Goodman would have been used better in an earlier season. Really give him something to sink his teeth into. Love or hate them, he went all in for Hound in the Bayverse Transformers. The man has a vocal range rivaled by very few, and you have an opportunity to really give him a character worth his name. Dr. Vizosa, great, iconic. Ms. Liz or Debbie, fantastic characters for any actor to really go in on. Tommy is just muted in comparison. This is a man that made Coen's brothers movies sing. He can act, he can do great voice acting, but here he's just sorta set to the side. Sure, they give Tommy a ton of lines, but it's all this bureaucratic nonsense. He doesn't have any quirky traits that make him something more to play off of. He's no Alabaster Jones. I don't know, it's just jarring to hear John Goodman's voice come out of Tommy. Remember when award-winning actor Michael Keaton was a pig man? Give us something like that. Give us the self-insert Brad Pitt Patch Boomhauer. Anything is better than Tommy. That being said, it is an excellent Dale episode that shows how into exterminating he truly is. Sir Punt is okay. You'll forget you even saw it after the credits roll. It just, man, the episode doesn't deserve the guest star it has. Sir Punt is a snake in the grass, 5 out of 10. Bill has no heir to pass his legacy to and starts to buckle. He then does a genealogy exam to try and find his living relatives. And the genealogist even fires up the Google to really blow his socks off. What a time. What a time to be alive. And yeah, after the report comes back, he finds out there are only 2 living Dautrives, himself and Gilbert. Now, I have been hard on David Herman characters recently, like Jimmy, but please understand, it's because the man is a talented actor who has so much range that those examples stick out the way that they do. We get the return of Gilbert, and it might be the best David Herman performance ever. Man is inspired when he slips into the Gilbert voice. This is a voice you can tell he really loved doing. However, this is where the episode gets a little confusing. Bobby bakes a cake and thinks it's something he could be good at, to the disappointment of Hank. You know, the same Hank that was excited to have Bobby cook Thanksgiving, or ate his roast, or celebrate his son's culinary achievements. Nope, forget all that. He shames his son for wearing oven mitts. Now I'll say this is where I, as a barbecue lover, love this episode. Bill needs a pit hand and has Bobby help with the barbecue on Hank's recommendation so he can learn a real cooking art. However, when given options between stacking bricks and hauling wood, Bobby just sneaks off. However, Bill even defends Bobby when Hank starts pushing him on the design. He knows that Bobby didn't help, but he doesn't hold it against him. And when the spread is done, only Gilbert shows up, his only living relative. Gilbert has made a publication to preserve his part of the Dautrive name. The Hills have some of the barbecue, and it's the best thing they've ever had, and they think that Bobby helped with it, so he's racked with guilt until he admits he had no hand in it. Everyone loves Bill's barbecue, and Bill actually finds a way to share his legacy by sharing his barbecue with the world. Buck even brings in investors for Bill's food, and it's actually amazing seeing Bill put so much care into his food, and Bobby feeling guilty as he comes to him, hat in hand, actually wanting to help. Bobby, without any coaxing, went to make things right and learn from Bill. However, Gilbert sees that Bill is trying to pass on the Dautrive recipe and lashes out, devastating Bill. A man whose passion is his food is brought to nothing by his only blood family. Make no mistake, Gilbert is a horrible person in this episode. You are absolutely right to hate his guts, but I genuinely believe he is so hateable because of David Herman's outstanding performance. Only he can say pocket weenies and have it hit with that much weight. Bill fights for his barbecue, and Gilbert still won't budge even when offered the profits. He goes home ready to be devastated by being all alone, and instead, Bill finds Bobby in his kitchen whipping up a variation of his sauce. Bill wants to pass his barbecue on through Bobby. Outside of one or two nitpicks, this episode is why I can't brush with broad strokes about this season, or really any season of the show. Blood and Sauce is one of the best Bill episodes of all time, and is one of the strongest, if not the best episode of the season. Blood and Sauce is a rare hit that can evoke raw emotion and just gut punches you with expert proficiency. The Bobby and Bill story makes you forget all the past stories, and it just gives you something so genuine and pure. Two people sharing a love of cooking, and someone passing down their cooking secrets to the next generation. Yeah. Blood and Sauce encapsulates the magic of King of the Hill. I don't have to tell you it's a 10 out of 10 episode, but it is. And it still has that emotional core that makes the series sing when it hits just right. So you have John Goodman as a guest star in this episode, one of the last Dautrives or something. Give him a bigger character to play, that's all I'm saying! We get the return of Luann working at Jack's, and we find out that Luann never got to go to prom. Lucky is going stumpin'. He goes to follow his gentleman's pursuit, and Luann feels understandably dejected. Bill has tinnitus. Lucky recruits Hank and the gang into hunting a golden stump of walnut wood. Turns out this stump is his great white whale. Fixing his winch is what caused him to slip on that there pee-pee at the Costco, and it's all connected. He is on a mission, and I gotta say, I respect that hustle. I respect that he has this project. I think anyone can respect the passion in a good old boy quest. Getting a stump out of the ground, that gets you a hell yeah right there. If that was all there was to the episode, just Hank and Lucky bonding as they get a stump out, I genuinely think the episode would have been great. But it isn't. Luann gets invited to prom, and Luann decides to go with a child to prom to get back at Lucky for ignoring her. Yeah. Fun fact, Kevin, the boy that Luann is using for revenge, is played by Jack DeSena, who you'd probably recognize as Sokka in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Elvin and Muddubber, grown men and convicts, start to threaten the child for taking their buddy's girl to prom. Yeah. To Jack DeSena's credit, he does a great job playing Kevin, which, I mean, he's super talented, but still, it needs to be said and respected. Kevin makes the very smart choice when two grown men threaten to take him out to not take Luann to prom. Peggy then forces a child to take her adult niece to prom. Like, when they go to That's Amore, the menu is literally just Comic Sans over a backdrop, and that's how empty this episode feels. Lucky feels like he should apologize to Luann and drives off right in the middle of stumping to make things right. For the record, Hank and the gang did exactly nothing wrong in this, and honestly, if Lucky had just communicated with Luann, it all would have been fine. There is nothing worse than miscommunication being the conflict in an episode. This just feels like the point of no return for Luann as a character. Remember when she was independent, was going to school, or tried to be better? Now she's throwing high school kids in the middle of her drama with her fiancé. Lucky even hands Luann over for her prom date, and then proceeds to dance with her to 25 or 624 in a gymnasium full of a bunch of confused kids. Like with the Bobby episodes, it made sense that they were awkward because being a kid is awkward. This is just bad. This is a 4 out of 10, really only saved by Hank and the gang loving stumping, and Kevin. Every other element just feels tacked on and crazy for the sake of being crazy. Luann Gets Lucky is an episode that just doesn't go anywhere and belongs nowhere. The Hills have a voicemail! Exciting things this episode, very exciting. Cotton is getting rid of his Cadillac. You know, the one he didn't buy back, got back, and then was mentioned to need to buy it back again. Well, he's got it. Don't think about it, and now he's finally selling it. And to who? Hank's cousin Dusty. Dusty Hill, aka Dusty Hill from ZZ Top. Billy Gibbons, Dusty Hill, and Frank Beard would all guest star in the episode as themselves. Fun fact, Billy Gibbons was actually a recurring actor in Bones, and Frank Beard is the one that doesn't have a beard. Hank is embarrassed by his famous cousin who constantly pranks him. Hank isn't a fan of ZZ Top. Hank isn't a fan of true classic rock. Man, it sure would be awkward if he looked up to Willie Nelson or had a love of music in previous seasons and he hasn't touched his guitar for a minute. I wish Hank was actually a fan of Dusty because I think it would have worked better in the grand scheme. But when Dusty comes to visit, Hank agrees to let him hang out when it's revealed that he's actually putting together a reality show and wants Hank in on it. Yeah, what an episode. The producer, Paul Portis, is played by Will Arnett well before he got that Lego bank. It's wild hearing him in this episode and yet familiar all the same. And they find out that Hank is really, really entertaining when he's angry, so they do everything in their power to keep him riled up. That makes a lot of sense, and that's how you build a reality show. ZZ Top buries a gold record in Hank's lawn, and all his closest family and friends start tearing up his pride and joy. Something they would totally do and is on brand for them. Remember when Dale ruined Hank's lawn and they all gave him strips of theirs because it meant so much to him? Nah, dig up that there gold record. Everyone just falls under the reality TV spell. Even Cotton pretends to have a moment with Hank for the cameras. They decide to have Dusty drive Marlena in a demolition derby to truly set Hank off. To Dusty's credit, he does feel remorse and wants to lay off of Hank for a minute. Hank has to watch the car he has always wanted go up in flames and then run off to save Dusty inside it. Dusty even stands up for Hank and fires Paul while fixing up the caddy to bury it. I think this episode is why I have such a problem with Serpent. ZZ Top and Will Arnett are perfectly over the top in this episode. It's a biting criticism of the reality TV boom of the 2000s, especially focused on classic bands. There was a time before Flavor of Love, Rock of Love, and the Osbournes. It was a simpler time, but it was a time. Like, the episode works because of how over the top it is, and there's no muted elements. Will Arnett is probably one of the best guest voices in the show, and this was him back in '07. The episode is made by its guest stars. I just wish it cared more about Hank. There was a better way to handle the Dusty always pranking Hank angle, but that's just nitpicking. I do with any episode anyway. Hank Gets Dusted is a sharply dressed 8 out of 10. Connie tries to shadow Peggy instead of working a squid boat so she can learn the inner workings of journalism. Hank is gifted titanium golf clubs. The problem? One of them was used in a murder. They're all great clubs. Hank is infatuated and there's nothing wrong with that. Peggy has to write an article on real estate master Chris Sizemore, and Connie encourages her to actually interview him and get in the nitty-gritty. Chris Sizemore would be played by returning great Chris Elliott, who last appeared in After the Mold Rush. Peggy gets railroaded and humbled before she gets fired from the bystander for harassing one of their best advertisers. Like, yeah, that makes sense. She wrote a hit piece, but don't worry, Chris Sizemore was waiting for her right after she got fired and gets recruited to the world of realty. This is Peggy's realtor arc. They cut one off just so that they can jump into the next one. We get the Sizemore crew, and it's fine. Peggy is run around in haze as she does all the heavy lifting for Sizemore, baking cookies, mining junk, the works. When she gets ignored, a very bad idea with her, she decides to throw her face out there and does an interview with Nancy, where she proceeds to get fired again. Peggy and Connie go into the realty business together to compete with Chris and earn his respect, but she doesn't have a realtor's license. Chris Sizemore is a perfect antagonist / boss for Peggy. They're both so self-absorbed they constantly clash, and it actually builds a momentum for Peggy to be this weird, bullheaded character she's become. But Chris Sizemore would not be nearly as scummy and self-centered as he is without Chris Elliott voicing him. Like David Herman and Gilbert, Chris Elliott does a masterful job of bringing Chris Sizemore to life and makes him the larger-than-life realty mogul you love to hate. If you like weird Peggy episodes, you'll enjoy this one. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the realty episodes, but I think that's literally just a personal preference. Chris Elliott is really the linchpin that holds the whole Peggy realtor arc together. I can't understate how bland it would be with anyone else at the helm. Also, the Hank and the gang story is perfect. I mean, that is a perfect classic B story right there. It didn't build its story too much, could be shown in just some quick burst scenes, bing bang boom, perfection. I love it even if it's to the service of a perfectly okay Peggy episode. It's also great seeing Connie doing more and just being involved. Glenn Peggy Glenn Ross is a high commission 8 out of 10. Bill's roof caves in over his bed while he was passed out on the couch, and he realizes it could have been his time. Bill actually starts to go to church more and is more religious, even helping out with groups of the church where he meets someone. There isn't really a B story to the episode because it's all focused around Bill dating Reverend Stroop. This is the only church-centric episode of the season, and I gotta say, I don't hate that. It actually makes sense. It has a payoff involving the church itself, and it just works. Bill likes how scandalous it is that he and Stroop are dating, and the mystery of it all boosts their relationship. But when it goes public and they start being judged, Stroop steps down as a reverend to spend time with Bill, and he starts acting up to break up with her. Like, that's the whole episode, and I gotta say, that's fine. We've seen Stroop had an interest in Bill even as far back as It's Not Over Till the Fat Neighbor Sings. This is something that has actually been pre-established and has a payoff. I mean, that's actually really, really great. Bill losing interest without the scandal or feeling guilty he took the reverendhood from her fits with his character. It makes sense with his ex-wife. It makes sense with his previous relationships. He needs the drama. He needs the spice. The people weren't even upset Stroop was dating, just that she was dating Bill and they found it disgusting. Like, okay, that's something. That's something to work with. Hank being the reluctant go-between, as Ted Wasana-song would say, super. It's just everything in the episode makes sense. It's not even badly written. Is it an uncomfortable Bill episode? Absolutely. But Bill is a little uncomfortable in it. Like, that makes sense. The episode is solid. It's everything it needs to be. There's not a ton of creative jokes. It's just kind of a down-to-earth story you'd expect from King of the Hill. This is an episode I would see in season 6 or 7 and go, oh, this feels very familiar. It's actually refreshing to see it 11 seasons in. The Passion of Dotrieve is a sermon ready 8 out of 10. It's the Video Games Are Violent episode. Justin Long returns as a student teacher alongside Breckenmeyer in this episode. Bobby is playing video games for PE, and it understandably upsets Hank since it encourages them to sit around and do nothing instead of preparing for the presidential fitness test, which I can only think of American Dad now. Hank runs into the video game class, and Bobby has to go back to conventional gym. When Hank finds out that the kids are playtesting games, which is a very important skill, he starts to lash out, and the student teachers visit to get research on propane to develop a game called Propane. It's GTA as a propane salesman, and Hank is ready to tear it apart until he gets absolutely addicted to it. Like, these guys build a game around Hank's passion and he gets wrapped up in it and loses track of all time while Bobby works out and tries to keep improving himself, even making steady gains. It's not a bad episode. Honestly, it's aged better than most and actually has a bit of a nuanced conversation about the very real issue of video game addiction. Now granted, this is back when GTA Game Bad was a good enough headline for conversation, so it doesn't have the information we have now, especially about, say, the freemium marketplace, which is a whole separate conversation. But for the time period, this is a really well done episode. We get the cuts of Bobby improving, and sure enough, Peggy is the one that has to pull Hank out because that's who her character is. Obviously, this episode couldn't happen in earlier seasons. The technology wasn't there for this to be the issue it was at this point. But the narrative structure, the writing, is on par with what we got back in Season 6 or Season 5. We're getting quality episodes again, and it's easy to see why. Remember, a lot of people thought Season 11 was going to be the last season, and it shows that they are putting all their work into it. Grand Theft Arlen is just another pocket episode where nothing really matters, though I will point out the animation style has completely transitioned at this point, and it is much more digitally produced, and this episode felt a lot more flat than the rest of them. Grand Theft Arlen is an ESRB abiding 8 out of 10 that truly does shine, even if it's 15 years old. Peggy really wants to be able to sell the Wasanasong house, but Cindy doesn't want to give up her community that she sells pots to. Peggy agrees to taking over her stake in being a cozy kitchen salesperson so that she can finally sell and move on, though it's revealed that Cindy had no intention of ever selling her home. Her higher-up now is Judy, played by returning great Perry Gilpin, which, I've got to be real, I love her way more in this than in Cheer Factor. This feels like a role she is a master at playing. Meanwhile, the real Rusty Shackelford comes to confront Dale and get him to sign over to stop using his name for all his crazy schemes, since it's destroyed his credit and reputation. That's a genuinely serious crime, all because Dale thought he died when he just moved away when they were kids. Thus begins Peggy and Dale's journey to erase themselves to escape from their pursuers. Peggy, justifiably in Cozy Kitchen, who she even tries to trick Luann into joining, which, bold move, Cotton, and Dale for skirting very real legal ramifications for using a fake identity for decades. I don't know. I'm not bashing the episode at all. It's kind of the perfect Dale and Peggy episode, especially after the taxidermy one, and it's great seeing them lose their minds over how to get out of the scheme. I genuinely wish more episodes were willing to go this far with their jokes, and honestly, this is one of the best episodes of the series. It's Peggy getting caught in yet another pyramid-shaped business model and knowing how hard it is to get out and still willing to push that envelope, still willing to do whatever it takes to get out of having to sell these pots. It does everything it needs to do and feels like a great benchmark episode. It's also great seeing Cindy be just as schemy as Ted, and while it may not seem like much, it actually builds the couple up. We never really saw her do anything beforehand, but she can be just as bloodthirsty. Peggy's Gone to Pots is a heat-resistant 9 out of 10. Dale is getting ready for an alien visit, and Nancy is struggling when she starts thinking about John Redcorn again, and John Redcorn tries to reach out to her at the station, so now she has to do a story on him. Again, I've said it before, but Phil Hendries is a great cast member who just brings every character he plays to life brilliantly. He makes for excellent boss characters. There's a weight to his voice when he knows how to deliver it. Again, he is a big part of why F is for Family is as good as it is. And while Dale is shrieking, he's visited by Khan's cousin in a futuristic car and thinks he's been taken on an intergalactic time-traveling adventure when he's just Tokyo drifting. All this happens at 8:48 p.m. The man is going on a ride. Nancy starts losing her hair, and John Redcorn flirts with her on live TV. Dale believes he got transported to 2048, only 24 years from now. John Redcorn lays it on thick, and Dale believes he's in the past now and might run into himself. So Hank tries to keep him away from Nancy so she isn't embarrassed by him. And she starts popping anti-anxiety meds, so what could go wrong there? Nancy then goes to see her mom Bunny, played by Rue McClanahan, aka Blanche from the Golden Girls. This would be one of the last roles she ever did. Turns out Nancy's proclivities are genetic, and when they give up their secondary lovers, the women go bald. Nancy decides that losing her hair is worth staying loyal to Dale. It's kind of a perfect Nancy episode. It has her face her vanity, John Redcorn, and her love for Dale. Dale, when he thinks that the world is ending, shows that the one place he'd ever want to be is right next to his wife. She shops for wigs with Dale, and I think that's the best way to walk away from the whole episode. That is the perfect capstone to their characters. Anything after is just gravy. Hair Today, Gone Today is a necessary episode that wraps loose ends that have been dangling since season 1. The jokes are well done and the stories are all believable. We don't get more Khan's cousin and we don't need to. He served his purpose perfectly. Hair Today, Gone Today is a wispy 8 out of 10. Remember Perfect Hair Forever? I remember. Stop me if you've heard this before. Bill is self-conscious, finds a group he fits in with, and loses his identity for the sake of joining the group. Now the problem? I think I love this episode more than all the other Bill gets suckered in trope episodes out there. It's time for Bill's physical, and he's more than a smidgen out of shape. So Hank and the families turn his garage into the neighborhood gym and start encouraging him to work out with them to get into shape. While going to get supplements to boost his pump, he runs into Dirk, played perfectly by Diedrich Bader, basically playing the sensei from Napoleon Dynamite. It's the same inflection and delivery, but it works brilliantly. Dirk gets his buddy's coach, played by Randall Reeder, and Gorilla, played by someone that they deserve their own sentence for everything they've done. There are few that leave such a monumental footprint on the cultural integrity of humanity. There are even fewer that entwine their very being in the public unconscious. Gorilla was played by the true undisputed, the eternal #1, the cream that will always rise to the top. That's right, folks. Gorilla was played by Macho Man Randy Savage. Bonesaw has you for 22 glorious minutes. A star that faded much too soon. Bill works out too much, ostracizes his friends, and ends up making his internal organs external somehow, and then he has to go through rehab, roll credits. You know the premise, you know the beats an episode like this has to hit, and it does hit them masterfully, but it's because of the voice work that this episode absolutely shines. Between Diedrich Bader and Randy Savage just bringing it full force and the joke delivery throughout, Bill Bulk and the Body Buddies is the perfect example of a pathetic Bill episode. We'll get other episodes that try to recapture this lightning later on, but nothing really surpasses this peak. I gotta say, the season as a whole has been really decent, and it shows that there were some really solid elements to still work with. Bill Bulk and the Body Buddies is a pumped up 9 out of 10. It was an incredibly short season, but hey, here we are, the series finale. Wait, what? Yeah, the show didn't know if they'd get another season or not, so Lucky's wedding suit is supposed to be the pseudo-series finale. It's time for Lucky and Luann's wedding, and Lucky doesn't have the funds to take care of everything. Luann wants a big ornate wedding, and so Lucky gets a job with Dale to pay for it, but when he falls off Dale's stairs, he tells him he's gonna sue and get his money. His attorney then starts trying to dig as much as he can and ends up going after Hank, and by extension Strickland Propane, for damages, because Hank told Dale to hire Lucky, and that's apparently good enough. What a note to go out on. Hank and the gang are able to trick the lawyer and get him to write Lucky's settlement that he can use for a down payment on a house for him and Luann. Hank gives Luann tickets to anywhere in the continental US, and then he walks her down the aisle. And as he does, everyone, and I mean everyone, is there. Chuck Mangione, Mac, Bernie Mac's character from that one episode that I'm sure Steve Harvey tried to steal too, Peggy's hairdresser, Patch Boomhauer, and the whole Boomhauer clan, Peggy's mom, Luann's friends from beauty school, Tammy, the hooker with a heart of gold, Hank's brother, Junichiro, Leanne, oh, and the child services agent that accused Hank of beating Bobby back in the series premiere. Gags all here. Yeah, it's not a stretch to see how this could be seen as the series finale. But it's very interesting that this is how the series would go out. Luann marrying L. Ron Kleinschmidt with a kid on the way and getting a house. It's an interesting decision that does at least give us something to walk away with Luann on. Is it the life you imagined she'd get? No. Life rarely works out that way. but she's happy. She has a safe and protected family of her own in a good neighborhood. And the man that treated her like she was somewhat family was the one walking her down the aisle with genuine love in his heart. The same man that watched her grow up through the years. The episode ends with Hank and the gang in their suits in the alley drinking a beer. Just like how the series started all those years ago, just now in suits. Lucky's wedding suit isn't a perfect episode, but it gets us to the end scene. That if we had to walk away from the series right here, right now, there's enough emotional weight that this could be satisfying. Lucky's wedding suit is an anything but frivolous 9 out of 10. I can't do it. I can't keep rhyming. 7 and I mean, and there we have it. That's season 11. Anything you think I was right on? Wrong on? What was your least favorite episode? Most favorite? Let me know in the comments below. While Lucky's wedding suit was pushed as a series finale, luckily we'd still get 2 more seasons with more episodes than the last 3 seasons combined. Season 11 was short, but for the most part it had a lot of really solid episodes, and ended on a note high enough you could look back at King of the Hill and at least feel somewhat satisfied. Now, did the rest of the show need to be made? Well, there's really only one way to find out. Next season we'll get a Death in the Family, one of the best Dale episodes, and a return of an oil man. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time when we delve into Season 12. Stay strong, know I believe in you, and that things will always get better. We're gonna get picked up by that algorithm, and I hope you never stop fighting. Never lose your fire. And if you liked what you saw, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends we're out here. Goodbye, everybody, and I'll see you next time.